The first thing you notice about the Gilded Cypress isn't the music, but the lies underneath it. The sultry sound of a saxophone was a given, a physical presence in the humid New Orleans air that clung to the velvet-draped walls. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversations. That was the surface. But beneath it was a roiling, discordant static. It was the sound of deception, of hidden agendas. For most, it was atmosphere. For me, it was a migraine. My name is Ilara, and for 2 years, this opulent cage has been my life. I move through it like a ghost in a uniform. I was born with a curse my grandmother called the sight. I don't see futures. I feel lies. They come at me like sharp, buzzing insects. Honesty is silence. Deception is noise. And the Gilded Cypress, the most exclusive club in the French Quarter, was a symphony of distortion. I served Armagnac to men whose smiles promised friendship, while their minds calculated betrayal. I was invisible, the quiet human wallpaper, and that incessant static was the only thing that kept me sane. It was my shield. Tonight, the static felt different, heavier. It started the moment he walked in. The crowd didn't just part, it dissolved. It was as if the dark waters of the Mississippi were yielding to something ancient. The buzzing in my head, the frantic orchestra of 100 lies, didn't just quiet, it vanished. It was sucked into a perfect, terrifying vacuum of silence. I didn't need the hushed whispers to know who he was. Every supernatural creature in the city knew him. Cassian Valerius, the vampire king of the New World. His reputation was a light-devouring shadow, and tonight, it had fallen across my station. He was taller than I expected, built with the solid, immovable grace of a centuries-old oak. But it was his eyes that arrested me, chilling, fractured obsidian. They scanned the room not with interest, but with absolute, timeless ownership. And for one heart-stopping second, they landed on me. I dropped my gaze, my heart hammering. The silence he projected was overwhelming. It was the silence of a mind so old it had no need for deception. It was the purest, most terrifying truth I had ever felt. My hands fumbled with a shaker. Don't look up. Be the ghost. His entourage settled into the reserved alcove. But he didn't sit. He moved toward the bar. My bar. Each footstep was a silent judgment. The space around me emptied. I was ground zero. Armagnac, he said. His voice was a low, mesmerizing baritone that vibrated straight into my bones. The 1888. Neat. I nodded, my throat tight, and reached for the dust-caked bottle on the highest shelf. My hands trembled. I could feel his gaze on my back, a physical weight, cold as marble. As I poured the dark liquid, another man slid onto the stool next to Cassian. Marius, a vampire aristocrat I'd seen before, his slick, nervous energy immediately setting the static buzzing in my head again. My king. A pleasure, Marius said, his voice too loud. The static around him spiked, sharp and painful. Let me get that for you. Before I could react, Marius reached over the bar, took the glass, and set it in front of Cassian. Then, with a flourish that made my blood run cold, he produced a small, ornate silver vial from his pocket. A gift, Marius whispered. A spice. To enhance the vintage. A special blend, just for you. He uncapped the vial and tipped a single shimmering drop into the Armagnac. My sight screamed. It wasn't a sound. It was a flash of white-hot agony behind my eyes. A lie, so potent it felt like a physical blow. I saw the drop hit the liquid, and in my mind's eye, I saw it burn. A cold, silver fire. Silver nitrate. Every instinct I possessed screamed in unison. This was an assassination. Marius's posture was too eager, his eyes too bright. Cassian stared at the glass, his expression unreadable. He reached for it. My grandmother's face flashed in my mind. Don't ever get involved, Ilara. You see something, you look the other way. But looking the other way was how she'd ended up dead. My hands were moving before my mind could catch up. On a pristine cocktail napkin, I scrawled 6 words with a shaking hand. I slid it across the polished mahogany. It came to a stop right beside the untouched glass. It is silver. Do not drink. Smile and leave now. I didn't look at him. I turned and busied myself with the sink. My entire body braced for the explosion. The silence behind me stretched, taut and deadly. I could feel his gaze shift from the napkin to me. I heard the soft rustle of linen. A second passed. Then another. Suddenly, a hand shot out. Not to take the glass. His fingers, impossibly strong and cold as marble, wrapped around my wrist, pinning it to the bar. The grip wasn't brutal, but it was absolute. I gasped, my head snapping up to meet his timeless, obsidian eyes. There was no anger, no surprise. Just a deep, unnerving intensity, as if he were seeing me for the first time. He leaned in close, his voice a whisper meant only for me. The scent of ancient stone and dry parchment washed over me. "And why?" he murmured, his thumb pressing against the frantic pulse in my wrist. "Would I do that? Little oracle?" He hadn't drunk it. He hadn't left. He had called me by a name I hadn't heard since my grandmother died. My life of invisibility was over. The world narrowed to the points of contact. The cold bar, the glacial grip on my wrist, and his terrifying gaze. My heart was trying to shred its way out of my chest. I don't know what you mean," I stammered. The lie was so flimsy, the static of it hissed in my own ears. I tried to tug my wrist back, but his hold tightened infinitesimally. A silent, effortless reminder of his control. "The note," he stated, his voice still a low, private rumble. "Explain." "Now!" He hadn't acknowledged Marius, who was now faltering. "My king, is there a problem?" Cassian didn't glance his way. "Leave us," he said. The words dropped like stones. Marius paled and slithered off the stool, disappearing into the crowd. We were alone again, an island of terrifying quiet. "You have 5 seconds," Cassian said, his thumb stroking once over my pounding pulse. "Who are you?" "Ilara," I whispered. I just work here." "That is what you do. It is not who you are," he corrected. "You felt something. You acted. People who just work here look away. So I will ask again. What are you? And what did you see?" The truth was a dangerous currency, but a lie now would be a death sentence. "The vial," I breathed out. It wasn't right. The static was wrong. He was too eager. I was babbling. It's poison. Silver." One dark eyebrow lifted. "Silver. You seem familiar with the alchemies of my kind. How?" He finally released my wrist. The skin tingled with a ghostly cold. I instinctively cradled it. "We need to leave," I said, finding a sliver of courage. "If he realizes it didn't work." "If he realizes it didn't work, he will panic," Cassian interrupted, his logic cold and brutal. "Panic makes people stupid. Stupid people are easy to find." He picked up the napkin, folded it, and tucked it into his inner suit pocket. A contract sealed. "You are coming with me." It wasn't a question. I can't. My shift." "Your employment here," he interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument, "is concluded. Permanently. Get your things. Now." My mind raced. My bag, my keys, my pathetic life. Was this a test? Would I run? I looked at his eyes and knew running would be the last mistake I ever made. Numbly, I nodded. I walked to the staff door on unsteady legs, feeling his gaze burning into my back. The locker room was a blur. My coworker, Cece, asked what was wrong. "You look like you've seen a ghost." It was nothing. A misunderstanding. I lied, my voice hollow as I grabbed my bag. "I have to go." I pushed back into the hallway. He was there, waiting, flanked by the man with the scar. "This way," Cassian said, gesturing toward a service exit. The humid night air hit me as the door opened onto a dimly lit alley. Parked right there, its engine a low purr, was a blacked-out Maybach, long and dark as a hearse. The scarred man, who Cassian called Balthazar, opened the back door. Get in. There was no choice. I climbed into the opulent, leather-scented darkness. He slid in beside me, his large frame taking up an immense amount of space, the temperature in the car dropping several degrees. The doors closed with a soft, definitive thud, sealing me in. The car pulled away in unnerving silence. I stared out the tinted window, watching my old life disappear. I was in a cage, rolling on wheels. "Where are you taking me?" I asked, my voice small. "Somewhere secure," he replied, not looking at me. "I told you what I saw. That's all I know." "No," he said, finally turning his head. The passing streetlights cast fleeting shadows across his sharp, aristocratic features. "That is the beginning of what you know. You recognized a poison only my kind should fear. You felt the lie before it was told. That is a story, and a bloodline. I very much want to hear." He leaned back. "So, start from the beginning, Alara. Not tonight's beginning. The real one." "There is no story," I said, turning to the window. "I'm a waitress. I watch people. Your friend, Marius, was nervous. That's all." "He is not my friend. And you are not just a waitress. You have the eyes of someone who has seen the shadows before. You called it static. An interesting choice of words." He was too perceptive. "My grandmother," I said, my voice tight. "She raised me. She had a gift. For tells. She said our family was special. That we could feel when things weren't right. She called it our sight. She said it was a curse that kept us alive." "And where is this gifted grandmother now?" Cassian asked. "She's dead." The words were flat. She saw a lie that was too big. And the man who told it didn't like being seen. A moment of silence passed. "Then you understand the nature of the world," he said. "It is not a kind place." We left the quarter, navigating the ancient oak-draped avenues of the Garden District. We pulled up to a set of towering wrought iron gates, hidden behind a 20-foot-high brick wall. The gates swung open without a sound. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress. Balthazar got out first, scanning the area before opening my door. We entered a grand, cold, and silent foyer. "You will stay here tonight," Cassian said, shrugging off his jacket. He moved to a sideboard and poured himself an Armagnac. "Balthazar will remain outside the door. Do not attempt to leave. The wards on this house are particular." "You can't keep me here," I said, a spark of defiance igniting. He took a slow sip, his obsidian eyes pinning me. "I can, and I am. You interfered in a matter of my kingdom. That act made you a part of it. Until I know who Marius was working for, you are a material witness, and a potential target." "A target?" The word was a cold stone. "They saw you. They saw me take you. If they are competent, they will already know your name, your address." He let that hang in the air. My shabby apartment. No longer safe. The reality crashed down on me. I was untethered, jobless, homeless, and trapped in the mansion of the Vampire King. "This is insane," I whispered, wrapping my arms around myself. I was just trying to do the right thing. "The right thing," he repeated, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. A dangerous habit. He set the glass down. There is a guest room up the stairs, second hall to the right. It has everything you need. We will continue this in the morning. He turned and disappeared down a dark hall, leaving me alone in the vast, silent room. I found the guest room. It was larger than my entire apartment, with a massive 4-poster bed and marble bathroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, my bag still on my shoulder. I pulled out my phone. No service, of course. The wards are particular. I was completely cut off. I was trapped in a gilded cage, and the ancient power that ruled this city was right outside the door. I didn't sleep. The sun was beginning to tinge the sky with a pale light when I heard a soft knock. I jolted upright. Yes? Balthazar stood there, his massive frame filling the doorway. He held a stack of folded clothing. The king thought you might want a change of clothes. He placed them on a chair. Breakfast is in 30 minutes. He will expect you. I stared at the clothes. Jeans, a cashmere sweater, and undergarments, all in my size. The unnerving efficiency made my skin crawl. He hadn't guessed. When I emerged, showered and dressed in the clothes that felt like a uniform, I found Cassian in a sunroom, reading a thick, leather-bound book. He looked up. In the gray morning light, he looked different. Still dangerous, but more real. He was dressed casually in dark trousers and a black Henley. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. A spread of food was on the table. My stomach churned. I sat, pouring coffee just to do something with my hands. We have located Marius, he said without preamble. I froze, the carafe hovering. He was found in his apartment an hour ago. An apparent suicide. The words were ice water in my veins. Suicide? That is what the evidence suggests, Cassian said, his tone neutral. But you don't believe it. I do not deal in beliefs, he said, taking a sip of his coffee. I deal in facts. The fact is, the vampire who tried to poison me is dead, truly dead, before he could be questioned. That is not a coincidence. It is a cleanup. It means whoever he was working for is thorough, and they are still out here. He looked at me, his gaze direct. Which means you are still in danger. And your value to me, little oracle, has just increased exponentially. My value? I repeated, the word tasting like ash. The static in my head, which had been blissfully silent in his presence, returned as a low, angry hum of my own fear. I'm not a stock to be valued. You can't just— I can, he interrupted, his voice devoid of warmth. He gestured to the untouched breakfast. Eat. You are human. You require fuel. I require your skill. He was already moving, walking out of the sunroom. We have work to do. My stomach, traitor that it was, made the choice for me. I grabbed a croissant, my hand still shaking, and followed him, the pastry dry as dust in my mouth. He led me not to a living room, but to a study that felt more like a strategic command center. The walls were lined with ancient maps, genealogical charts, and tactical reports. A massive desk dominated the room. You called me an oracle, I said, my voice quiet, desperate to understand. At the bar. You knew. I did not know, he corrected, turning to face me. I felt, when I seized your wrist, I felt the signature of your blood. It is a magic my kind has not encountered in centuries. The oracles were lie detectors. Their bloodline was thought to be extinct, hunted into oblivion by my ancestors, because we, more than any other creature, thrive on the secrets you expose. My blood ran cold. My grandmother. She was hiding me. She was wise, he conceded, his obsidian eyes holding no pity. Her protections must have been strong. But you are here now. And your sight, this static you feel. It is the only weapon I have against a conspiracy I cannot see." He gestured to a stack of bound documents on his desk. Marius was a fool, a pawn. His strings were pulled by someone inside my own circle. He pushed the top document toward me. "These are the official reports and testimonies from my inner council. Balthazar, my other guards, and," he tapped a name, "Genevieve." The weight he gave the name told me everything. "Find the lie, little oracle," he commanded. "Find the static." I was a waitress, not an interrogator, but looking at his unyielding face, I knew I had no choice. I opened the first file. It was a dry report from Balthazar. I read the words, and the air was silent, clear. I could feel the simple, factual truth. Then I opened the transcript of Genevieve. Her words were eloquent, full of concern for Cassian and shock at Marius's betrayal. But as I read, the static began. It wasn't the high-pitched buzz of Marius. It was a cold, subtle, slithering distortion, a lie of omission. It was wrapped around one section in particular, a meeting she'd had with Marius 3 days ago, supposedly about shipping routes. "Here," I whispered, my finger trembling as I pointed to the paragraph. "She's lying, or not telling all of it. The static is cold. It feels hidden. She's protecting someone." Cassian's stillness was terrifying. A faint white line appeared around his lips. "Genevieve," he breathed, his most trusted advisor for 200 years. The betrayal was a palpable thing in the room. "There's more," I said, pushing past my fear. "This isn't just internal." I pointed to another set of files, financial ledgers. I had glanced at them, and the static had flared. I pulled them out. Payments for arcane acquisitions. Most of them feel normal. "Normal for us," he murmured. "But these," I tapped a line item, "are different. The static is sharp, like Marius's, but more complex. A series of payments to a CR nightshade." Cassian's eyes narrowed. "Corvus," he said, the name a snarl. "Corvus Reyna, a blood mage, a broker of chaos and secrets. He is a ghost." "He's the facilitator," I said, the pieces clicking together. "Genevieve is the internal traitor, controlling the information. Corvus is the external weapon, arranging the how. Marius was just the hand that delivered the poison." Cassian looked at me, and for the first time, the cold assessment in his eyes was mingled with something else, a flicker of respect. "You have done in 1 hour what my entire council has failed to do in a month." The intensity of that gaze was a physical force. He was surrounded by lies. My sight, my curse, was the only solid ground he had. The hours bled together. He brought more files. I waded through them, my head pounding, the static a constant roar. I identified 2 other minor players, their lies small and fearful. With each discovery, the web became clearer, and the noose around Genevieve tightened. I was exhausted, my mind rubbed raw. "I need a break," I finally said, pushing a ledger away. I can't hear anything but the noise. I'm not a machine, Cassian." He stopped, watching me. I was pale, trembling. "No," he said, his voice softer now. "You are not." He walked to the sideboard in his study and poured 2 glasses. He handed one to me. It was the Armagnac. "I can't. I'm human." "A small amount," he said. "It will steady your nerves, not dull your sight." I would not want that. I took a tiny sip. The liquid fire was a shocking contrast to his cold presence. We stood in silence, the unlit room filled with the ghosts of betrayal I had just unearthed. "They have surrounded me for centuries," he murmured, his back to me as he stared out the window at the dark garden. "An eternity of doubt." He turned his obsidian gaze on me. "Your sight. It is the first true thing I have felt in 100 years. Everyone wants something. What is it you want, Ilara? I want to go home, I whispered, the truth absolute and sharp. I want my tiny apartment and my noisy, lying neighbors. I want to be invisible again. You were never invisible, he countered, setting his glass down. You were merely hiding. You cannot hide from what you are. He stepped closer. The space between us crackled. And I will not let you. My heart was no longer pounding from fear, but from something else. A reckless, terrifying curiosity. He was the only person in the world who didn't buzz. His silence was an addiction. You are a monster, I breathed, needing to remember. I am a king, he corrected, his voice a low vibration. And monsters and kings share one trait. We take what we need to survive. His hand came up, so slowly, and he brushed a stray strand of hair from my cheek. His fingertips were impossibly cold, a whisper of contact that sent a jolt straight through my core. And I find, he murmured, his gaze dropping to my mouth, that I need this. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't a question, it was a claiming. His mouth was on mine, a shocking glacial cold against the heat of my skin. It was the scent of ancient stone, a kiss that tasted of absolute power, and a desperate, lonely hunger that mirrored my own. My hands came up, clutching his shirt, anchoring myself in the storm. It was a clash of worlds. His immortal stillness, my frantic, human pulse. It was the worst decision I had ever made. And in that moment, it was the only one. He broke away first, his forehead resting against mine. We were both breathing heavily. This, he stated, his voice rough, complicates everything. You started it, I whispered, my lips numb. I will finish it, he replied. He pulled back, his eyes burning with a cold fire. The moment was broken. He walked to a heavy safe concealed behind a map. He removed an antique-looking necklace, a dark teardrop-shaped stone set in oxidized silver, hanging from a leather cord. This is not a gift, he said, his voice all business. It is a tool. The stone is obsidian, warded. It will dampen the noise of lesser minds, help you focus. And he fastened it around my neck, his cold fingers brushing my collarbone, a deliberate, possessive touch. It will mark you. It will let everyone in my world know that you are under my protection, that you are mine. It was a collar. It was a shield. It was both. I just touched the stone, which felt strangely warm. Corvus Reina, he said, turning back to the desk. He is the key. Genevieve is the head of the snake, but he is the fang. We must pull it. You said he's a ghost, but he is a ghost with habits. Your discovery of his payments gives us a pattern. He favors the St. Roch market, the midnight market, where supernatural creatures trade. He will be there tonight. So, we wait for him? We do not wait, Cassian said, a predatory light in his eyes. We hunt. The plan was simple. Cassian, Balthazar, 2 other guards, and me. I'm not going, I said, panic rising. I'm not a soldier. Which is precisely why you are coming, he countered. He is a mage, Ilara. He deals in illusions, glamours. I cannot trust my own eyes. I can only trust your sight. Hours later, I was huddled in the back of the Maybach, the obsidian necklace heavy under my sweater. We parked a block from the market, the air thick with rain and decay. Stay here, Cassian commanded. Keep your eyes on the entrance. No, I said, a new, cold bravery filling me. You're wrong. He's smart. He won't use the main entrance, and he'll be shielded. I won't feel him unless I'm close. Cassian studied me, his gaze calculating. Very well. You stay with me. Do exactly as I say. You are a shadow, my shadow. We moved through the dark alleyways, Cassian and his men moving with an inhuman silence. The midnight market was a chaotic whisper of activity. Hooded figures bartered in hushed tones. The static was immense, a roaring cacophony. The necklace helped, dulling the noise to a manageable, throbbing ache. We took a position in a shadowed alcove. "I'm scanning," I whispered, closing my eyes, letting my sight stretch out. I felt nothing. Nothing but the small, greasy lies of the market. "He's not here, or he's shielded." "He will be," Cassian said, his patience absolute. Then I felt it. A new static, sharp and cold, slicing through the dull roar. "There!" I breathed, my eyes snapping open. I pointed to a figure across the courtyard, his back to us, cloaked in a heavy, dark robe. The static. It's him. It's the same as the ledgers. That's Corvus. In a blur of motion, too fast for my human eyes to follow, Cassian and his team converged, surrounding the figure in a silent, lethal triangle. "Corvus Rhine!" Cassian's voice boomed, cutting through the market's whispers. The entire place froze. "Your contracts in my city are terminated." He reached out and ripped the hood from the figure's head. It wasn't a man. It was a teenage boy, a human, his face pale and terrified, eyes glazed over. A thrall. "Where is he?" Cassian snarled. The boy whimpered. But I felt it. As the boy's terror spiked, the static around him dissolved, revealing something underneath, a pulsing magical sigil on his chest, designed to project a lie. A lie so powerful it had mimicked the signature of Corvus. "It's a decoy!" I yelled, just as I felt the real static, a block away, sharp and clear, and laughing. I could almost feel it laughing. "He's over there! On the street! He's getting away!" Cassian was already moving, a black blur of rage. He crossed the block in a heartbeat. They reached the street just in time to see the taillights of a black car disappear around the corner. Corvus was gone. The ride back to the fortress was a suffocating glacial silence. I had failed. My sight had been tricked. Cassian stood at the window of the study for a long time, the failure radiating from him in cold waves. "He didn't just outmaneuver me," he finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. "He mocked me. He knew I was coming. He knew I would bring you. He used your own sight against you, baiting you with a magical lie." He turned to face me, his eyes black holes of fury. "He has a source, not just Genevieve, someone who knew I had found you. Someone who knew what you are." The implication was horrifying. The conspiracy wasn't just deep, it was listening. "This changes the game," Cassian said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "He is not just a facilitator. He is a rival. And Genevieve, her betrayal runs deeper than I could have ever imagined." He looked at me, the cold, hard mask of the king firmly back in place. "They are no longer just trying to poison me. They are hunting my oracle." The failure at the market was a poison in the fortress air. Cassian's quiet fury was a contained storm, radiating cold in the vast, silent study. He dismissed Balthazar, leaving us alone. The decoy's cloak, the evidence of my failure, lay on the floor. He was in my city, and walked away, laughing. Cassian's voice was a low vibration of rage. "He used your sight against me, turning my greatest weapon into his amusement. This was an insult." I stood my ground, the obsidian necklace cold. "He's moving faster. He knows you're aware. He knows about me. He won't use poison again." He turned, his obsidian eyes burning. "He has a source, with access I cannot comprehend. Someone who knew I had found an oracle, before I even understood what you were." His gaze hardened. "He is not reading my mind. He is reading my patterns. And only one person alive has studied those patterns for 2 centuries. The person who drafts my schedules and authors my security details. Genevieve, I whispered, the name tasting like ash. She didn't just know, Cassian said, moving to the desk. She arranged it. He pulled out a tablet. The conclave. The what? The veiled conclave. A formal gathering of every major supernatural faction. It happens once a decade. A masquerade ball, a truce night. He looked at me, his face a mask of cold realization. It is in 2 days, and she is the primary organizer. The pieces snapped together. It's a performance, I said, my mind racing. Corvus won't just try to kill you in an alley. He'll do it on a stage, at the conclave, in front of everyone. Exactly, Cassian agreed. He will assassinate me. Genevieve will feign horror. She will use the chaos to seize control. She won't be seen as a usurper, but as a savior. But the ball, a masquerade, I said. Corvus deals in illusions. How will you even find him? How will you know who to trust? I won't, he said, his voice flat. He looked at me, the full weight of his dependency settling on my shoulders. But you will. He stepped closer, the glacial cold radiating from him. The entire event will be a lie, a sea of illusions and masks, the loudest symphony of distortion you have ever experienced. Your necklace will not be enough. Then what do I do? I whispered. You will be my guest. My partner, he stated. You will not leave my arm. You will not speak. You will simply listen. You will be the one true thing in a room full of deceptions. You are the only one who can see the fang before it strikes. He leaned in, his lips brushing my forehead in a kiss that was not passion, but a seal, a vow. You will be my eyes and my ears, Elara, and together we will watch them unravel. The next 2 days were a blur of suffocating tension. The night of the conclave arrived. A gown was laid out on my bed, a masterpiece of deep, midnight blue velvet, like armor. When I emerged, Cassian was waiting at the foot of the stairs, in a black tuxedo, a simple black silk mask in his hand. He held out his hand. Do not be afraid of the noise, little oracle. Just find the truth within it. I placed my hand in his. His grip was still cold, but it was no longer a shackle. It was an anchor. The conclave was held in a forgotten, deconsecrated cathedral. The moment we stepped from the car, the static hit me. It was a physical blow, a roaring tsunami of 1,000 lies. I gasped, stumbling, but Cassian's arm was steel around my waist. The obsidian necklace grew hot, trying to filter the noise. It was barely working. The ballroom was a breathtaking, terrifying spectacle. Masked figures in decadent gowns drifted under the soaring ceilings. Fae, werewolves, and whispers. The air was thick with perfume, magic, and deception. She is here, I whispered, my head pounding. The static, her static, is everywhere, cold and sharp. Stay focused, he murmured, his voice a calm anchor in my ear as he led me into the throng. Every eye was on us. Who is she? A human? His new pet? Cassian ignored them. Then I saw her. Genevieve. She stood near the grand altar, a vision in blood red, her mask a delicate filigree of silver, her smile triumphant. Her static was a shield of cold, smooth ice. She was calm. She approached us, her smile widening. My king, she said, her voice like honey. You came. I was so worried. After Marius, we must be vigilant. The lie was so perfect it was almost silent, but I could feel the cold, slithering truth beneath it. We must, Cassian agreed, his voice dangerously neutral. I trust you have the evening well in hand. Of course, she said. Security is absolute. Nothing can penetrate these walls tonight. Liar, I whispered, too low for her to hear. Pardon me, child? She asked, her eyes narrowing. She said, Cassian intervened, his hand tightening on my arm, that she is impressed by the security. As am I. Genevieve's gaze lingered on me, on the necklace. Her smile tightened. She knew. She knew what I was. The failure at the market made sense. She had warned Corvus. This way, I tugged on Cassian's arm. The other one, the mage. His static is close. It's sharp. He's here. We moved through the crowd. I scanned the masked faces, my sight straining. Then I felt it, coming from a balcony overlooking the ballroom. A figure in a heavy hooded robe, his mask a simple blank porcelain face. He was staring right at us. Corvus, I breathed. At that exact moment, Genevieve mounted the altar steps, a glass of wine in her hand. My friends, she called, her voice magically amplified. A toast to the king, to Cassian Valerius, who has led us for so long. It was the signal. From the balcony, Corvus raised his hand. No one saw it, but I did. I saw the air warp, saw a shimmering, invisible dagger of pure magic form in his grip. He was aiming for Cassian. There was no time to think. I broke from Cassian's grasp, shoving him hard. Down! I screamed. The world exploded. The magical dagger missed Cassian, shattering a marble pillar. Chaos erupted. Vampires hissed, and the music died. Seize him! Cassian roared, pointing not at Corvus, but at Genevieve. Balthazar and the guards, hidden in the crowd, moved as one. They grabbed Genevieve before she could react. What is the meaning of this? She shrieked, her mask of calm shattering. He attacked! The king is under attack, and you arrest me? It was you! I shouted, my voice raw, stepping forward. The entire ballroom was silent, watching. It was always you. You hired Corvus. You used Marius. You lied about the shipping routes. You lied about the market. You lied about everything. She's hysterical, Genevieve spat, struggling. A delusional human. Cassian, you cannot believe this. This pet over me. Your most loyal servant. The council, the assembled elders, hesitated. They looked from Genevieve to me. Her lie was powerful. The word of an elder against a mortal. She is not a pet, Cassian said, his voice a deadly calm that filled the cathedral. He walked to my side, placing a hand on my shoulder. She is the oracle, and her sight is absolute. He looked at Genevieve, his eyes black pits of judgment. The lie is over. Genevieve's face crumpled. The static around her exploded into a supernova of raw, terrified hatred. Corvus, seeing his plan failed, had already vanished. It was over. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple. We were back in the fortress. The silence was real this time, not a vacuum of power, but the quiet of an ended storm. Genevieve was in the cells, deep beneath the house. Cassian stared out the window of his study. He had summoned the minor players I had identified, the two vampires who had helped Genevieve out of fear. They were kneeling, awaiting their sentence. Death. That was the law. Cassian looked at them. His instinct, the instinct of a king, was to make an example, to kill them. But then he looked at me, standing by the fireplace, exhausted, human, and alive. He turned back to the kneeling vampires. You have betrayed this city, he said, his voice cold. The law demands your lives. But I have learned that true loyalty cannot be forged in fear, only in truth. He passed his sentence. You are exiled. Your bloodlines stripped. You will live out your days in the human world, powerless, forgotten. A fate, for our kind, worse than death. Now go. It was a mercy I never expected. It was a third path, a shade of gray. It had all started with a simple note, a 6-word act of courage. I had been brought into this world as a tool, a weapon. But in that ballroom, when the world exploded, I had been something more. A partner. I looked at Cassian Valerius, the Vampire King. The monster who had stolen my life, who had marked me as his own. He was still all those things, but he was also a being. A king burdened by an eternity of lies, who had finally found one small, human truth to anchor him. My grandmother taught me to hide my sight, to fear the world. She believed it was a curse that would get me killed. But she was wrong. Hiding didn't save her. Courage. Courage had just saved an empire. We are taught to fear the shadows, to see the world in black and white, monster and mortal. We are taught that power is strength, and that immortality is the ultimate prize. But the shadows are filled with shades of gray. Real strength, I realized, wasn't in Cassian's power or his agelessness. It was in his willingness, at the final moment, to trust. To place his entire existence in the hands of a frail, mortal woman who could see the truth. And that is the real lesson. Strength is not the absence of fear, but the courage to act despite it. And trust. Trust is not a weakness. It is the most profound and terrifying magic of all. It is the only magic that can bridge the gap between two worlds and see the person hidden beneath the monster. Cassian turned from the window, the morning light touching the silver in his hair. He held out his hand. I walked to him and placed my hand in his. His grip was still cold as marble, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a shackle. It felt like an anchor.